Okay, we are ready to go. Hello, everybody. Today I have a special guest in my show, and I'm going to talk to Dr. Olsi Jazexhi. His surname is a little bit difficult for me to pronounce, but Dr. Olsi is from Albania, and he has a PhD in history. He is a university professor, teacher, and he's working with he has been working with radical and extremist groups in Albania, or actually in Europe, extremist organization, I should say. And he's a freelance journalist, political analyst, and commentator. Also, he has his own YouTube channel. He is posting political issues and political videos on his YouTube channels. So the subject we are talking about today is very interesting, and for me it's very splendid because I didn't actually know what is happening in Albania with regards to MEK, Mojaheden el Halk, which has been housed and located in Albania, in the heart of Albania, in Tirana, since 2016, as Dr. Olsi said. And this terrorist group has created lots of unrest and turbulence and problems in Albanian society, and not even that actually for European countries. So lots of questions. I'm sure that you have lots of questions why Albania is doing this and housing a ticking bomb in their country. So therefore, I have invited Dr. Olsi to answer all these questions. And I welcome you, Dr. Olsi, and I'm so pleased that you accepted my invitation. And I'm sure after this interview and after this talk, our audience and viewers will be more will be informed about what is going on with regards to Mojaheden el Halk, MEK, and their leader is Maryam Rajavi. So the microphone is yours. Please add anything about introduction of yourself if I missed out something.
Parvin, thank you very much for having me on your show. It is very interesting to speak to you and to the Iranian public who lives in North America. I am a scholar of Islam. I come from a Sunni background.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, but I have visited Iran, and I know the rich culture that your country has. Now, coming back to the question of MEK, since I'm specialized on the history of Islam in Europe, the question of MEK was one of the topics of my research since the fall of the regime of Saddam Hussein in Iraq. I have been very active against the war in Iraq, but then I have started to study all these radical and terrorist organizations that have been created by the West and their Saudi and Israeli allies since the American intervention in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. I have studied the phenomena of DAESH or ISIS, the radicalization of Muslims in Europe who went and joined DAESH to fight against the Syrian government. And then what happened is that in the year 2013, we have the first group of Iranian Mojahideens coming to Albania. In the time, we had a small group of these people, around 200. But then what happened was that in February 2016, as it seems after the Iran nuclear deal, we had John Kerry, the Secretary of State of the United States, coming to Albania and telling to the Albanian public that the Americans were going to relocate in our country some 3,000 Mojahedeens. Now, the announcement of the Americans scared the Albanian public. There were many protests by different analysts, security analysts, journalists, historians in Albanian media, whereby they asked our government not to turn our country into a terrorist base. Mm-hmm. In 2012, 13, and 14, we had many Albanians who left our country because they were radicalized by American and Saudi propaganda for doing jihad in Syria. Oh. And yes, and as a result, after the Americans understood that they could not win the war in Syria after the Russian intervention, in August 2013, we had the Supreme Commander of NATO in Europe. His name was, I forgot his name, but surname was Bridlov, who came to the Balkans and asked our governments to change the penal code, whereby joining a foreign army for doing war in a foreign country for us in the Balkans became a crime. Under the supervision of the Americans, we had dozens of Albanian Muslims who were jailed as terrorists in Macedonia, in Kosovo, in Albania, but even we had other Muslims who were jailed in Bosnia, Serbia, and so forth. Americans forced the governments of the Balkans to change our laws and to put in front of the court and jail people who would come in the Balkans and call for doing war in a foreign country. But what happened in 2016, suddenly we had 3,000 foreign fighters, Iranian terrorists, the Mojahedeens, who were brought to Albania from Iraq. At that time, I participated in many TV debates in Albania, where I asked our government not to bring foreign terrorists in our country, since these people are going to create security problems for us. But our government was ordered by the Americans to take the Mojahedeens. From 2016 to 2017 or 18, the Mojahedeens were portraying themselves in Albania as victims of Iran. They were going to our TV stations and to our government and begging people and telling people, please accept us. We are humanitarian refugees. We have no problem to do with the security of your country. Please only host us. But what happened was that after the elections of Donald Trump in the United States and the coming of John Bolton into the White House and Rudy Giuliani,
the warmonger.
Yes, these Mojahedeens, who first in Albania came as asylum seekers and refugees, suddenly started to make political and jihadi activities and calling for war against a foreign country, which in this case was Iran. So what MEK started doing after coming of John Bolton into the White House, that these people from asylum seekers, they started to break the law of Albania and all the Balkans, and they were calling for doing jihad, war, terrorism against a foreign country. In 2018, we had another event which shocked our public here in Albania. We had an Iranian Canadian family, the family of Mustafa Mohammedi, who came to Albania and wanted to meet their daughter. They have a daughter in the MEK camp because, for your Iranian viewers, we have to tell them that Iran has, MEK has built a paramilitary camp here in Albania, where, according to the data from the Albanian government, they have around 7,200 jihadis who are being kept inside a camp. Now, what happened in 2018, we had one Canadian family who came to Tirana and they wanted to meet their daughter. Because in this jihadi camp of MEK, there are many people who are hostages or who have been abducted since when they were kids. So what we discovered, because my wife is a lawyer and she took over the case of the Mohammedi family, was that the Mujahideen have taken a girl when she was 17 years old from Toronto, and they had put her inside the camp. These people had kept this girl in Iraq for many years, and now, after being transferred to Albania, she is in the MEK camp. The question that we had in this time was, number one, MEK came to Albania telling to Albanian government that they need to have asylum because Iraq doesn't want them and Iran want to kill them. Good enough. But now what we discovered was that we have some people who have Canadian residency and are hosted in this jihadi camp. So the question that we posed to MEK and Albanian authorities was this. Our government has given asylum to the Mujahideens because they claim that Iran is going to kill them, which is a pure lie. But now we find out that there are some people who have or can get Canadian residency. So we asked our government, when the case of this girl, Someh Mohammedi, is that she can go to Canada, why should we host this Canadian would-be residents in our country? Moreover, something that shocked our public opinion was that MEK did not allow Someh Mohammedi to come out of the camp and meet her parents. Why? Because MEK was afraid that Someh would escape. For your Iranian viewers, we have to tell them, and all the international community who watches this interview, is that MEK keeps people as slaves in its paramilitary camp. So if you are a member of MEK, and MEK has abducted you from Iran, from Turkey, from Kurdistan, whatever, 20 or 30 years ago, you have to live inside the camp. You have not permission to get out of the camp. And as you can see, these people are living in the camp since 20 or 30 years. These people have no phones, no access to the internet. They're not allowed to marry. They're not allowed to have sex. They're not allowed to meet men and women. They live like soldiers. They do not know what goes on in the world. What they know is that there is one holy woman who calls herself Maryam Rajavi, and she depicts herself like some kind of Imam Mahdi for these people, and she tells them we're going to liberate Iran. So what we discovered was that this organization which came to Albania is an organization which keeps hostages, keeps its members as slaves, does not allow them to have freedom, does not allow them to marry, does not allow them to go to university, does not allow them to own property. But these people are being kept as a standing jihadi army. So what we have in Albania now at present is like what we had in Raqqa at the time of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Daesh, where the leader of Daesh or ISIS had taken so many Muslims from North America and Europe and was using them as suicide bombers, killers, and terrorists. This is the situation with MEK, which has shocked our public.
So you're saying that the Albanian people, ordinary people, they actually know about the camp, and also they know about how Maryam Rajavi and the leaders of the MEK are treating people there, and actually they are prisoners in that camp. I believe that most of these guys, most of these people who are in the camp, they have been deceived and they have been given fake information in order to attract them to the camp, and then misuse them and train them as terrorists. At the beginning, I guess that the US government wanted to place them in Albania as a humanitarian issue. But whenever you whenever you find out or you hear about humanitarian from US government side, then you just get very suspicious what is actually their hidden agenda, or what I should say, their ulterior motive. So now, soon after we found out that they are going to use the MEK as, terrorist organization, as a DAESH group, for different political programs or terror programs. But anyway, some of these guys who are in the camp, they are innocent people who have been cheated and who have been brainwashed. And MEK, of course, is a criminal organization. So I have some questions, but thank you so much for letting us know about. So why do you think that the US government chose Albania to house MEK? Why not another country? Why not USA? I mean, if they felt very sorry for this organization, or they had sympathy for them, why they did not take them to the US?
They did not take them to the US because MEK was listed as a terrorist organization by the American government until 2012. So bringing MEK to United States would have been a legal nightmare for the Obama administration, because you would have had so many court cases against these people. MEK could have only been sent to Guantanamo, where is outside of US jurisdiction. They could have been sent to some worship in the sea, because there is no country that accepts them. Before bringing MEK to Albania, Americans tried to send them to Macedonia, to Romania, to Bulgaria, and a number of other European countries, but no country accepted them. MEK are considered a terrorist organization in many countries still, but they had to be removed from Iraq, because in Iraq, many MEK soldiers have court cases for the crimes that they have done against the Iraqi people. So the Americans, they had a big nightmare in front of them. They didn't know where to send them. And the only government which offered itself to host MEK was the Albanian government. The question, why Albania? The short answer is that Albania is a state that is being run by organized crime and mafia. So many of our ministers are drug dealers, are people who are involved in the international trafficking of drugs and weapons, and the Americans know that. Albania is, since the collapse or fall of communism, has been turned by the Americans into an American colony. We have a supreme leader here in Albania, which is called the US ambassador. So the American ambassador here manipulates the elections, justifies thieves who come to power, and they have turned Albania into a second Dominican Republic or Haiti or Panama, where Americans can do anything they want. They choose Albania because Albania offered itself and because Albania is not too far from the Middle East. I believe that one of the intentions of the Americans for bringing MEK to Albania was to use them in the future as a blackmail against Iran. Like Americans used the so-called Free Syrian Army, Jabhat al-Nusra, ISIS, DAESH against the Syrian Arab Republic, the plan was to create a second fake jihad scenario with MEK in order to blackmail Iran and other countries in the Middle East.
Actually, I have a question. Since the Slobodan Milosevic failure or defeat in actually overtaking Albania, and the US helped Albania to get rid of that guy, I think in return, the US has turned Albania to a safe haven for criminals and for terrorist organization. Am I right? And they are actually bribing the Albanian government to take care of these whole bunch of criminals. Is it true?
Slobodan Milosevic was the president of Yugoslavia, and the Americans helped Albanians of Kosovo, which was a province of Yugoslavia, to get independence from Serbia. Yes, Slobodan Milosevic's defeat by the Americans was a major important step towards the American invasion and total control of the Balkans. The NATO invasion of Kosovo in 1999, the establishment of American bases in our region, the collapse of the Soviet Union have turned many countries in the Balkans to serve as colonies for the American administration.
Okay, so did he not directly interfere with Albania, Slobodan? I mean, did he not want to invade Albania? It was the Balkan, as you say, but I'm not sure whether he was interested to invade Albania too.
Well, there was a conflict between Albania and Yugoslavia at the time of Slobodan Milosevic, but the major aim of Milosevic was to preserve Yugoslavia, which of course he failed, and he ended up in Hague, and there is no more Yugoslavia in the Balkans because the Americans had decided to destroy Yugoslavia.
Okay, I understand that. Now, since you and many other activists are exposing MEK for Albanian people and also the government, I believe that the government of Albania knows pretty well what these guys are doing. How come Albanian government is still housing them and protecting them? I saw a clip that a journalist tried to approach the camp, and they were actually prevented to come. I mean, perhaps 100, 200 meters from the camp, they were prevented to come closer, and you know, they kicked their camera. So I guess they have security guards. The Albanian government security guards are protecting these people. How come they know that the Albanian people are not happy to have this ticking bomb in their country, but still they are protecting them? What is it because they are afraid of the Zionists, they're afraid of the US pressuring them, putting pressure on them, or is it because they get lots of money from them, lots of financial support? What is what is the most important reason?
Look, Albania today, Parvin, is like Iran in the time of Mossadegh, when you had the Americans who were putting your ministers, who were commanding the Shah, and the Shah had to do anything that Americans asked them to do. Now, our government understands that MEK is a big problem for them, but they have to keep them because the Americans asked our government to do that. Like 2 years ago, I was speaking with one Albanian MP, a member of our parliament who is in the Security Council of our government and of our parliament, and about the issue of MEK and how they were manipulating Albanian politicians, and they were putting a lot of pressure on Albania to break its relations with Iran and so many other things. And when I was talking with him, he told me, Olsi, we know that MEK is a terrorist organization, but we cannot do anything because Americans have asked us to host them here. If American politicians stand up against MEK, they will end up like Mossadegh. And you know the story, what happened to Mossadegh. Yeah. So Americans, with their overwhelming control of Albanian politics, economy, and the destruction of democracy that they have done to our country, they can ruin the life of any Albanian politician or person who will do something against MEK. MEK is a strategic asset of the United States and Israel, that they are hosting them in Albania because they are our good terrorists. They are the terrorists that serve to American interest in the Middle East. And we know, for example, the history of the Free Syrian Army. We know the history of the Kurdish Peshmerga. We know the history of DAESH, how they were created by Western secret services to be used against countries of the Middle East.
But anyway, you're saying that they are bribing some people in Albania in order to disconnect them from Iranians, or even these guys, if somebody managed to escape from the camp. I saw your clip about some Iranians who have escaped the camp, and it is so ridiculous that these guys are considered being terrorists, the guys who have got a connection with MEK, and they have come out, they want to have a ordinary life, just a normal life. They want to have a family life and live in a society, but the MEK is making life miserable for them and threatening them. And the MEK members, all those guys who are living in the camp, they have legal papers, but these guys, they do not have work permit, they do not have resident permit, and they don't have any work. They don't have a decent life. And I felt so sorry to see all of these guys who have been cheated, and they have been in this camp for 28 years. They are actually my fellow Iranians. Actually, what is Albanian's government in order to solve this problem? Perhaps, if not Albanian government, if they were smart, they would actually integrate these guys into the society. I'm sure that if they open the gate, if they force MEK to open the gate of that camp and free the prisoners, I'm sure that perhaps 70–80% of them, they will escape. They like to get out and have an ordinary life, but they are forced to live there. But how come if it is, I mean, you can ask the, the humanitarian or the United Nations to actually help these people to get integrated into Albanian society, and somehow those guys, the leaders who are the actual criminals, okay, they can stay in that camp. But the rest
Parvin,
what do you think about this?
Yeah, these are very good points that you're raising. When MEK came to Albania, there was a big debate in Albanian society. What should we do with them? I was one of the participants in these debates. And in the time, the Americans were putting a lot of pressure on European governments to fight Daesh and to de-radicalize Muslims who joined jihad in Syria. And in that time, I said that now that we have MEK here, we must also de-radicalize.
Excuse me, Olsi, sorry to interrupt you. Sometimes your voice gets interrupted. I don't know whether you are too far from the microphone or what is happening. So please go ahead, and perhaps you can get closer to your microphone or something. I'm not sure what you should do.
No, I think this is something normal with Skype, but at the end you are going to see the voice is nice.
Oh, okay.
So coming back to your question. So one of the points that we raised in Albania when MEK came in 2016 and 17 was that we have to de-radicalize the MEK. Now, MEK, which is a foreign terrorist organization, had to undergo the procedures that Albanian law requires for foreign terrorist organizations to be de-radicalized. But the Americans did not allow the Albanian government to de-radicalize the MEK. Instead, they supported MEK. We had some American senators like John Bolton, John McCain, and others who came to Albania, and they were putting pressure to the Albanian government not to touch the MEK. And what happened was that MEK, instead of being de-radicalized and assimilated into Albanian society, went the other way around and created a paramilitary camp in our country. Now, American politicians, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, and others, they like to depict MEK as the opposition to the regime in Iran. They claim that Maryam Rajavi is the lady that is going to come to Iran and to bring democracy. However, this is such a big parody and crazy thing because MEK is not a democratic organization. It is a fascist, cultish organization where Maryam Rajavi and her commanders keep the MEK soldiers as slaves and in total isolation. Now, coming back to your question, there is a riot inside the MEK camp. There are hundreds of Mojahedeens who would like to escape, but Maryam Rajavi doesn't allow them. The MEK camp that we have in Albania is like a prison. They have 3 security layers, 2 which are being held by the Mojahedeens themselves, and another by Albanian, a private Albanian security company. MEK soldiers who are inside the camp, they are told by Maryam Rajavi and her commanders that if you escape the camp, Iran is going to kill you, which is not true. Now, we have already in Tirana, which is the capital of Albania, a number of MEK defectors who have managed to escape into freedom. But our government, which is siding with MEK, is doing the life horrible to those ex-Mojahedeens. So let us say if you are an ex-Mujahideen terrorist, you are inside the camp of Maryam Rajavi. You want to escape into freedom, to get married, to have a life, to abandon jihad and terrorism, to say, I don't want to fight, I don't want to do terrorism. If you go out of the camp, the Albanian government is going to make your life horrible. Albanian government doesn't give you a work permit. Albanian government doesn't give you proper papers, so you are not allowed to work, you cannot survive. Now, in Albania, we have in Tirana, which is the capital of Albania, we have a group of MEK defectors, around 100 people who have managed to escape from the camp. These people denounce to the media and in the internet what happens inside MEK camp. These people are the real opposition to Maryam Rajavi. But what Maryam Rajavi does against these people, she calls them agents of Iran, and she puts the Albanian security services after them. Since the coming of MEK to Albania in 2016, Albania has become a no-go area for Iranians. So let us say you are an Iranian American. If you want to come to Albania, Albanian secret service is going to come after you. Why? Because for Maryam Rajavi, a good Iranian is a dead Iranian.
Good Iranian is a dead Iranian.
Yes.
For this criminal woman.
Yes, and unless you agree to obey to Maryam Rajavi, unless you agree to go into her terrorist organization, you are an enemy. Some of these defectors who have defected the jihad are being persecuted at this moment by Albanian police because Maryam Rajavi tells to our government that they are Iranian agents. We have a case of a guy called Ehsan Bidi. Ehsan Bidi came to Albania in 2013, long before Maryam Rajavi came here. He is a very big critic of MEK because MEK has tortured him and made his life horrible. The UNHCR gave to Ehsan Bidi a political asylum status in Albania. But because Maryam Rajavi hates him so much, and she has a lot of money, she gets a lot of money from Saudi and Emirati governments, most probably she bribed Albanian police and they put Ehsan Bidi in 1 year in prison without a charge. They put him in a detention center only because Ehsan Bidi was professing his democratic right of free speech that we have here in Albania, that you can say anything that you want because we are supposed to be a liberal democracy. Maryam Rajavi hates democracy. She hates freedom of speech. So she put this guy, Ehsan Bidi, for 1 year in detention. And after he came out, Albanian police took Ehsan Bidi and threw him to the Greek border. So Maryam Rajavi, with her crazy hysteria against every Iranian that we have in this country, she caused a diplomatic incident between Albania and Greece, because Greece was alarmed by the Albanian government to see that Albania was throwing Iranians to her borders when these people should be refugees in this country.
But okay, I have a message for Iranian people who are watching this show. So for Maryam Rajavi, a good Iranian is a dead Iranian. This is what she wants to bring to Iran, democracy. This is her definition of democracy. And I just want to get this message across to young people who get actually a kind of interested to join this terrorist organization because they are lying, they are deceiving you. So be careful. And no matter where you are, don't become a toy for this terror organization, for this dangerous organization, for this dangerous woman. She is a psycho. I'm sure that if she gets a psychological test, they will diagnose her as a psycho. Now, my next question is that these guys who have managed to escape from the camp, from MEK, why they do not actually ask the Iranian government to take them back? Because I'm sure if they have not killed anybody, if they have not taken part in terror action which has caused Iranian people death or destruction of public, public places, I don't think that Iran regime is so brutal that they would not accept these guys to, to come back. So why have they ever considered this option? The guys who have escaped the camp. And also one more question. I'm sure you're saying that more than 100 Iranians have escaped the camp. I'm sure that they know about lots of other Iranians in the camp who want to escape. How can they help, or how can you or other organization help these guys to escape? So there are two questions. So could you please elaborate?
Number one, coming to the question of escaping. It is very difficult to escape from the MEK camp because the Iranians who are being held inside the MEK camp, they have no phones, no internet access. They cannot communicate with their families. So they live in total isolation. We have some Albanian MPs, for example, who want to visit the MEK camp, and they are not allowed to visit the camp without the permission of Maryam Rajavi. Americans have done everything in their power to help Maryam Rajavi to isolate those Iranians inside the camp, to indoctrinate them with fake stories, to scare them so that they do not escape. Maryam Rajavi has a private Albanian security guard. These people, they are armed. And if somebody will go and will try to enter the camp, they will be shot and killed. You have seen the video that you quoted to me before. We had international medias coming to Albania, like the Channel 4, Al Jazeera, and others, where their journalists, they were beaten by the private security guard that Maryam Rajavi has. Now, your first question, why these defectors don't go to Iran? Some have gone to Iran, but others do not. Because you see, the life of these people, Parvin, is very complicated. I have met many of these defectors, and these people, they don't, some of them, when they come out of the camp, they don't know even how to use the iPhone, or you have a smartphone in front of you. And these people do not even know how to use the smartphone. I've seen some of these people who were so shocked when they've seen horses. Why? Because for 20 or 30 people, these people, they have seen no animals, and these people are being kept. Can you imagine if you lock somebody in a prison for 20 or 30 years and you bring him out? I know, for example, the case of one of these Mojahedeens, and he had been a big gunner for MEK in Iraq. Maybe he killed Kurds or Shias or whatever. And when he came out of the camp, Albanian Secret Service was harassing him. And we as lawyers advised him not to be afraid of them. We showed him the democracy that we have in Albania. Because even though we are a mafia-run state, we in general, because of the European influence, we have good laws. So the law protects you if you know how to use it. And these people, they're like little kids, they do not know how the world functions. Because I mean, these people have been kept in isolation for 30 years. They do not watch movies. They haven't seen Rambo. They haven't seen Sylvester Stallone. I mean, these people watch only the ugly face of Massoud and Maryam Rajavi, and they shout every day, free Iran and free Iran. These people, they do not know what is democracy. Because if there is a democracy inside the MEK camp, nobody is going to elect Maryam Rajavi to be the head of MEK. These people live in a totalitarian, cultish organization, and these people are real victims. You cannot imagine, and many of these people, they have even psychological problems, because imagine, these people, they have no family, they have no kids, the MEK does not allow them to talk to their mothers. If one Iranian inside the MEK camp is caught talking to his mother or father, Maryam Rajavi and her commanders are going to accuse them of being Iranian agents. These people live with fear. They have big traumas. There are many psychologists, Albanian psychologists. There is one organization which works with MEK and who have done research on them. And they found out that majority of these people, they have traumas. They have psychological traumas. They are not normal humans.
Oh, you know, it reminds me of a cult group. I think his name was Jones. I don't remember his, but he managed to fool more than 1,000 American people. And one day they drank poison, and all of them were dead, including himself. Maryam Rajavi and her organization act and behave like this. Now, my message to Iranian people is the following. See how American democracy works. They support terrorist organizations like Maryam Rajavi, like MEK, and they prison people like this, and see how many thousands of people life has been destroyed, is the destruction of people's life, and they want to bring democracy to Iran. Just see this. This is American democracy. That is what they do. They create DAESH, they create Maryam Rajavi organization, and so many others. So these are the examples. But you were saying that these guys who have escaped, they don't even know what is a cell phone or a smartphone or whatever. In the same time, hundreds of Maryam Rajavi's troops are sitting behind advanced computers, and they are making cyber attacks and cyber terror, and they are troll and cyber terrorists. So how do you see that? I mean, how come there is such a huge gap between these kind of troops and the other troops you're talking about?
I've spoken to some of the defectors who have worked in these Twitter clicking farms of MEK. And he explained me how it works. There is a big number of these MEK soldiers who sit in the paramilitary camp of Manza, whose daily duty is to attack Iran, the government of Iran, Western politicians, Western medias, and anyone that speaks good about Iran. So what these people that you see them in the picture with computers and others do, they have commanders who stay in top of them. And these clicking farms that they have, they are like the call centers. These people use a number of fake names, and they have their commanders who give them orders. So when these people sit in the front of computer, they're not allowed to see Madonna, they're not allowed to see Elvis Presley, because this is haram and sin for them. But they have their command which tell them, guys, today New York Times wrote a good article about Iran or Iran nuclear deal. Go and attack it. So what they do, they open their Twitter accounts, they go to the New York Times and they start cursing the journalist, the newspaper. They say, oh, you have been bought by Iran, you are agents of Iran. And this is what they do. I mean, these people are not allowed even to read books. We have one defector, his name is Hassan Hirani, and he told me, Olsi, when I was in the MEK camp, I started reading the novel of George Orwell, The Animal Farm. And by reading this novel, I understood that our organization was an Orwellian organization. I asked him, but how did you manage to read this book? Because you are not allowed to read George Orwell inside the MEK camp. He told me a friend gave me a tablet, and when I was going to sleep, I was keeping it under my sheet in the bed, and I was reading it by pretending that I was sleeping. Can you imagine? These people are not allowed even to read books.
But this woman is definitely a criminal creature. And I must tell you that some of these guys, some of these, MEK soldiers or cyber soldiers, they come and leave very nasty comments underneath my videos, and they have a very bad mouth. So this is their job. But I really feel sorry for the guys who have regretted the past, and they want to join just a normal life and the society. And I really wish for them, if they haven't been involved in killings. I'm sure that Iranian government is willing to forgive them, and they should go back to Iran. And I really want you to encourage them to look at this option. I mean, we have psychologists, and there are lots of mechanisms to help these people. Somehow, as a human being, I must just admit, people can make mistake, and some mistakes is, you pay a very high price. And I believe that these guys, being in the prison for so many years, they have paid the price. So I'm not actually supporting the MEK, not all of them. These guys are terrorists, these guys are criminals, but the ones who have regretted what they have done, they should have a chance. And I really ask you, and I really want you to discuss this option with them and ask them to start the process, at least for those who are not guilty. I mean, I saw your clip. You were asking these guys, have you done any criminal actions or something like that? I don't remember exactly what your questions were, but to me, they seem to be innocent people who have been caught in the wrong place and the wrong time by these criminal organizations. What do you think?
Well, I've spoken with many defectors, and I've told them exactly what you are telling to me. I've told them, go back to Iran. Now it is difficult. Number one, they have no passports, because for you to go back to Iran, you need a passport.
But let me just interrupt you here. This is a special case. I mean, they can do. I'm not even sure. Do we have an embassy in Albania, Iranian embassy?
We have one Iranian embassy, but MEK has destroyed this embassy. You had in 2018 the Iranian ambassador being expelled, and now the embassy has a very limited staff. MEK wants the Albanian government to close this embassy. So, I mean, the relations between Iran and Albania has been destroyed by MEK and Maryam Rajavi. And Maryam Rajavi wanted to destroy the Iranian embassy here in Tirana, Albania, because she felt so threatened by the presence of the Iranian embassy. Because for as long as you had an Iranian embassy, many MEK members were hoping to escape from the camp and to go to the embassy and maybe find some kind of documents and go back to Iran. And many have done that. But let me finish. But then we have another situation. many of these defectors have their loved ones inside MEK camp. For example, we have many defectors who have their mother or their father or their loved one or their brother who is inside the camp, or their friend, because these people lived in a prison for 30 years. And these people say, we better stay here in Tirana, Albania, because one day my friend or my father or my mother might find a way out to escape. And if he or she escapes, I'll be here to help them. So do you understand? The situation is very complicated.
What do you think about Iranian government or Iranian regime taking action and for the purpose of destruction of this camp? I'm not saying to attacking the camp, because some people who, as I see it, they may be innocent, they may get killed. But how do you see that any action like that taken by Iranian regime to actually destroy this camp, and when the Albanian government obviously does not cooperate with Iranians, and they are housing some terrorist organization who have taken lives of so many innocent people in Iran. So Albanian government is then is actually cooperating with the MEK. The Albanian government is also a terrorist then, if they are protecting such a terrorist organizations like MEK, and I believe some other ones. So
Parvin,
Iranian have two options. Either they take their own their own way of defeating this or solving this problem, whatever they decide to do, or they go to the international court and ask them to actually close down this camp and deliver all the members to Iran. How do you see that? I mean, two options. Iran take action on its own, whatever is suitable, or going to the court, to international court. Take Albanian government to the court.
Parvin, I think this would be the last answer because it's almost 1 hour. And let me reply to you shortly. Number one, I do not think that the Albanian government is a terrorist government. Our government is a corrupt government. And I blame for the presence of MEK in our country, I mainly blame the Americans who brought them here, and also the European Union, number one. Number two is, I don't think that Iran can do anything against MEK for as long as they are in Albania, because number one, Albania is a NATO country and we are under the European security framework. So the Iranian government knows this thing very well. And I don't think it is in any position to do something against MEK. What I observe from far and what I understand that the Iranian government is doing is they are happy that MEK is no longer in Iraq, because in Iraq they were close to the border and they could go and kill people inside Iran. And in a way, I think the Iranian government is happy to have MEK in Albania because it is far from the borders of Iran. Now, what can the Iranian government do for it? If we were to live in a peaceful world, in a world of international law, etc., Iran should have gone to the International Court of Justice and should have legally asked Albania to dismantle this terrorist organization. But you have to know something, that MEK is not being protected by the Albanian government, but it is by Israel United States, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates.
But okay, on this issue, I do not agree with you because either the Albanian government does not have possess any power to say no, I do not want to house these, or they are cooperating. It is either way. But Albanian government, they have their share. They have their share. Okay, I appreciate the fact that they are far away from Iran's borders. But what is actually really, how should I say, saddening me is the kind of life these guys are having in this big prison called the MEK camp. And so I believe that as human beings, we need to help those guys who are captured and kept there as prisoners. So this is what I'm saying. And of course, the criminal ones, they should be prosecuted for criminal acts or criminal actions. But we need to have the Albanian government to work with us.
What I think that you, as Iranians who live in diaspora and in the United States, can do to save those thousands of Iranians who are being held as slave soldiers inside the MEK camp is to approach human rights organizations like Amnesty International, like Human Rights Watch, to go to the United Nations, to protest, and to ask the UNHCR to free these people. There are many resolutions by the United Nations which condemns terrorist organizations, slave soldiers, and what have you. The problem is that the Iranian government is not wanted in the United States and in many parts of Europe. So if the Iranian government does this, the great powers of Europe and United States, they are going to ignore it. But if you, as Iranians who live in the West, are going to raise your voice about what is going on in the MEK camp, you can bring a change. Because we have to know something, after all, that the issue of the slave soldiers that MEK keeps inside its camps, apart from being an Iranian issue, is a humanitarian issue, is a human rights issue. These people are humans like all other human beings. These people deserve to live in peace, deserve to have families, deserve to get married, and deserve to be de-radicalized. And the Western governments, they make so much propaganda in the United States, in Europe, against radicalized jihadi Muslims. Whenever a Muslim does a crime in the West, he is immediately blamed as a terrorist. So we have to tell to the Western governments, you have to also de-radicalize the Maryam Rajavi group. You have to free these people, because the excuse that Maryam Rajavi and her commanders use to keep their soldiers as slaves inside the camp is the threat of Iran. In my humble opinion, Iran should take no action against these people, but should ask international courts to intervene. And inshallah, if the Trump does not get elected, and you have Biden being elected in the United States, and if Iran will have a second Iran nuclear deal with United States and other great powers, I believe that Iran should put as one of the conditions of the Iran nuclear deal the dismantlement and the de-radicalization of the Mojahedeens. The Mojahedeens who live in Albania, they should be freed from the gang of Maryam Rajavi. They should not be kept as terrorist soldiers. They should integrate and they should live a civilian life.
Inshallah. But anyway, Dr. Olsi, I wanted to thank you so much for participating in my show. Just for the viewers, you know that Albania's population is nearly 3 million and 70% of them are Muslims. So this is just for your information to know. And also the country is 30,000 square kilometer, which is a good size, and it is located in the ocean and in the center of the Europe, in a sense, a very nice place. But anyway, thank you so much. And I was thinking to have another show where we can open the telephone and you can answer questions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I would love that very much. As you might know, I'm a Canadian as well, and I have lived in Toronto for a long time. And I know many people of the Iranian community in the GTA. And Iranians are great people, and I'd like to have a chance to have a debate with the Iranians who live in North America and to discuss with them the tragedy of MEK, and also to see, I would also like to see opposing views, because something that I want to let your viewers know, here in Albania, very often I challenge MEK, because MEK attacks me for my articles and my interviews. And I tell to MEK, listen, why don't you come and let's have a debate? Because something that people should know about MEK and Maryam Rajavi, these people are afraid of the free speech. These people, they do not dare to talk. And now, by the way, because our video is going to be watched by Maryam Rajavi, I do again challenge Maryam Rajavi, and I tell her, please come and let's have a democratic debate. Of course, she is afraid. She doesn't dare to talk to free people because she is a cult leader. She has some mental problems. But we have to teach MEK to be democratic, to believe in democracy, in freedom of speech, and in open discussion.
I think it is perhaps too late for them. They just need to be dissolved and integrated into a society where there is a real democracy, and you know, those good guys should have a decent life. I really wish for them, and I'm really broken heart to know that so many of my fellow Iranians are captured and live in under such circumstances in this crazy woman's camp. And so what can I say? Anyway, thank you so much for participating, and let's make another show and we answer the phones. Thank you so much for this one, and have a great evening. So I will announce, this is for the viewers, I will announce the time of next show. So, and perhaps we will do an online show and open the telephone. You can come and ask questions from Dr. Olsi, who is very knowledgeable about MEK and generally speaking about all the radical and terrorist groups. And unfortunately, I just feel so sorry that many of them are housed in such a nice country as Albania. But anyway, thank you so much to you and Albania for housing these creatures. Some of them are creatures, I would say. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Bye-bye. Khoda Hafiz.
Khoda Hafiz. And you know some Persian words. That's great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.